Hello, everyone. My name is Dimitri, and this is Hitesh. And today we're going to do interview using InfraNodus, text network visualization app. I'm going to ask Hitesh a few questions about the stuff that he's currently working on. It's a very interesting topic. He is really into stocks and especially into Tesla, and he knows quite a lot about this company. And I want to poke his mind a little bit using InfraNodus, so basically using the new feature of InfraNodus, which visualizes the answers of Hitesh and then recommends what would be the next interesting question to ask him. So the graph will be interviewing Hitesh. And hopefully we will discover a lot of interesting things, and maybe even InfraNodus will also pose some questions that will generate some interesting insights for Hitesh, although he said before that he knows a lot about Tesla, so it's quite unlikely to happen, but this is also a test. And the reason why we actually wanted to do it with Hitesh is because he just is a very amazing person, my friend, and he knows a lot about Tesla. And I wanted him to share his knowledge with everyone else because he seems to have it covered completely. And also to test this new feature in InfraNodus to see if it could generate interesting questions for Hitesh. Maybe, do you have anything to add, or shall we dive into it?
So hello everybody. I think Dima has now introduced me as an expert. I think there are so many things to actually know about this company, and hopefully some things would be I would be very happy to actually divulge into. I've been very excited to follow this company for more than 2 years, and a little bit of an obsession with Elon. So yeah, I would let's get out viewpoints that I've not thought about, if we can uncover something using the tool. And I would also try to give a thesis around in understanding why is Tesla. Basically the stock has 10x in less than a year. And this is unprecedented in a stock market. Options, sure, but in stock market, my God, you would not find so many stocks that actually do this. Yeah, so I'm very much happy to dive into Tesla, and precisely because it's actually, in my opinion, a great opportunity. So I think everybody should really understand the disruption that is currently ongoing in this space. And it's great that Tesla exists because it brings us that much closer to sustainability. And this is this is what.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hitesh. Cool. So let's visualize everything as a graph. I'm going to make it bigger on the screen, and I'm going to create a new one for our interview, and basically start asking you questions. So let's begin. Let's open everything here. Okay. So
before we begin, maybe I can give a little bit of an intro of myself. So what have I been spending most of my time doing? So I began my I don't want to call it career, but basically adulthood at the engineering college in southern India, and extremely cool. Then I to have different interests. I even worked for a defense research program for autonomous cars almost 10 years ago in India, which is at that time nobody was talking about autonomous, but I was actually working on early technology. And then I was working for a VC company where we also again started to dive deep into the autonomous projects and the energy projects. That is a disruption that is going on. This was in 2017 or 2016. That's where there's no better investment than Tesla, and that's how I got into it, and I got super involved with it. And then a year ago, I was working with Daimler, trying to bring their autonomous strategy to So that's how I'm professionally involved with cars and autonomous technology. So and I personally think that there is nothing better than I mean, maybe not. You might not see so much of a leverage being happening like in the moment. Like a lot of the gain has already happened, but we can dive a little bit deeper into the stock also afterwards.
Nice.
Cool.
Okay, well, so maybe the first question will be, can you tell me a little bit about your investment strategy, thesis about Tesla?
Oh, okay. So if you go back slightly in 2019 or 2018, time like nobody really had Tesla, and like, I mean, why should it be valued where it was being valued at that time? It was about like 20 to 50 billion market cap, and it was 0.03% of total vehicles, and it is being valued at the same level as as GM, Ford, and other car companies. And they could not understand like the number of cars due related to gap. Of course, if you fast forward today, it is again even more insane because Tesla is valued at more than the entire car industry combined. And the thing that most of the people really miss there is they think that Tesla is a company. This is important to understand. Tesla is not a car company. It is a tech company, and the and the important leverages that Tesla can create just because it has a different business model. So if you think about most of the car companies, how do they make money? Is because they have an existing fleet where they generate a lot of the margin. So like a margin on the services is super high. Then the margins on the company, if you're an incumbent traditional car company, you tend to sell your car for a lower rate and make money later by servicing it. This has been the model for almost all of the car companies. Now, that's the reason a new car company is almost like it's very difficult for them to succeed because they don't have a fleet. And if you go back in the history, like from Tesla, has been no successful car companies in the US for more than a century, and that's just crazy. So that's one of the theses that everybody thought. So I'm not doing any more stocks that maybe it's overvalued. But then again, I mean, we will get a little bit more deeper into this. But I already bought most of my stock in 2019 out of 2020, and the reasoning was people don't understand that it's not a car company, and valued like always to car companies, which is not correct. And I will show you another one graph now, which basically drives this point down really well. If you share the screen, you will see why maybe I make it a little bit bigger. This what you see in front of you is basically signifies the debt that each of the car companies actually have. And the green is the market cap, which is like, I mean, how much money is being put on the entire business of that car company. So if you look at all of the old cars, for Volkswagen, they have crazy huge debt because producing car is a debt heavy business. And it's just the way it is. So if you look at like any of the traditional car companies, they have so much debt that the valuation does not make sense. And now if you go to Tesla, you will see that compared to the debt, the market cap is way higher. So you can see that business is not comparable. And B, it is not. And finally, now in October 2020, you can see that Ma understands that Tesla is not a car company as well. And that's why the valuation is also out of whack.
Okay, that makes sense. Maybe I'm going to switch back to the graph because I want to also use the graph to ask the questions as well. So, for example, right now you talked about several different topics, and they're visualized on the graph here. We have the main terms that you use, like a car company, Tesla, money, debt. then what it does is that it proposes us here to think of the different connections between the different terms. So for instance, here, it's asking us to think of the connection between Tesla and evaluation and the car company debt, which is what you've been talking about now, that basically all the car companies, they have too high debt, and Tesla has very little debt comparing to valuation. So here we switch in between these topics. But what is interesting here is when it proposes us to look at the structural gaps between the two topics. So for example, in one context, you talked about success in history, like if you go back to history, that there has not been any success. And then you talked about how also their model of making money was making money based on the service. So can you tell me more about the connection? Like, is there any relation between this lack of success and the money-making model which those companies had before, and how is Tesla different in this way?
Yeah, basically the major issue of for a new startup company, a startup automaker to go into the market, that they can never compete with the other incumbents, because they cannot afford to sell the cars at such lower margins. Otherwise, they go out of business. And making cars is a capital intensive business. Able to sell the cars for almost no margin, and if you don't have a fleet, you basically have no possibility to make money, and that's one of the core reasons why no car companies could be successful. New companies successful. This product is 10 times better than the existing product. Only then you will be able to charge. What able to prove that they have produced a much better product. They were charging it for higher prices, and now slowly those prices are coming down, and so is going to fleet as well, where they instead of making the money on servicing the cars, because inherently electric cars, they require less maintenance, they're going to actually have subscription as a model. So they're going to have full self-driving, entertainment features or productivity features going into the car and making money from the existing fleet. So moving forward, Tesla is only going to be producing more money because it would not be a startup anymore, and it would have a fleet. So fleet very, very to the success of a company, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And if we look at the graph again, what I wanted to ask you also is about the connection between, like, once again, that let's say if we delete the car company Tesla, so this is also one iteration which we can do using the graph, and then we look into what are the topics which are hiding behind those main ones that we talked about. So for example, here it's talking to us about, like, it's actually proposing us to think of the connection between once again the experience in history and time and the productivity feature. So let's go into this a little bit more. What you talked about was that Tesla would probably propose some kind of entertainment and productivity features in the car. So do you see it as a software company more, and this is where you think it has a potential to outperform all the traditional car companies? And
yeah,
are the others not doing the same?
Yeah, so first, Tesla has already won this decade because they would be the first one to solve full self-driving capability, and there is nobody who, even in like closest second, who's going to be able to solve it. The first company, I'm not 100% sure what happened, but the first company to solve autonomous is going to be Tesla for sure. And the reasoning behind that is they have better data, and they have better, like, I mean, they have like so many Tesla enthusiasts. Basically, like, there is no production version of the autonomous fleet which is constantly learning from its fleet. There's no car company which has this fleet, and the Tesla customers are basically training network. And if you go on the other side, if you look at Google's Waymo, or if you look at Cruise, they're hiring engineers in San Francisco area, which cost like about $200,000 per year for them to be finally training. And the scale is heavily different. Tesla has about 1 million cars on the road right now, which are always constantly training the neural network. And there is no other car company which has this type of crazy data view, which is essential, which is required to train any biggest machine learning project in the world. And that's the only way to actually leverage that. So Tesla is going to win selling. And the way to think about valuation of Tesla would be the value of full self-driving multiplied by the number of cars they will be selling. That's the way to think about how what should be the entire value. And the value. I mean,
again the last sentence, please, because it cut.
So the value would be the entire lifetime value of the autonomous car multiplied by the number of cars they sell. And Elon estimates that each car worth $100,000, the lifetime value that it can actually generate, due to the full self-driving capability, and that's multiplied by $100,000. That's what his claims are. Cars they're going to sell. So if we just go 10 years into the future, these are my opinion. I think it's going to have more than 10 million produced per year, and just simply multiply 10 million multiplied by 100,000, which is about raised 10 into 10 raised to power 6 multiplied by 5. So
how much is it again?
That's 100 billion.
What's the calculation? 100 billion.
Yes. And this is just like a rough out of the, sorry, 1 trillion. Okay, I think you'll have to do like cut and edit this a little bit, but I calculated this one.
No, I think it's actually 100 billion, because you have 5 zeros and then you have, you have 7 zeros actually, plus 5. Yeah, it's exactly 1 trillion.
Yes. So 1 trillion, just the entire, car produced that year. And that's why, for the because my thesis is that Tesla is going to solve full self-driving or autonomous, through which they're going to provide so many services, productivity. Before we get into the productivity thing, if you think about just the autonomous features, obviously there's a lot of just taking people from place A to place B. And then you can also think about logistics, how much Amazon actually moves from from point A to point B. You can also leverage that. On top of that, you can also provide a lot of tools. What are they going to do in the car when they get transported? They're going to watch Netflix. They're going to have some different productivity services that's going to be provided. Always gateway through would be via Tesla. So that's why I believe Tesla is going to be the first one to solve autonomy. The valuation is just, there's no bar. It can be valued at anything. This market has not existed until now. So this is unprecedented and is, in my opinion, comparable to innovation in 19th century and 20th century, once electricity was discovered, or also the cars were produced. It's at that level of scale that it's going to multiply the productivity of people. And that it's to think about valuation for Tesla.
Okay.
Yeah, I might have sidetracked a lot, but in a sense, productivity valuation comes in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so let's delete all the stuff that we talked about, like market, company, Tesla, and car, and focus a little bit more on the specifics. So you talked about also here's proposing us to think of the connection between the valuation or the market cap of the company in relation to other car companies, and then also this hiring process. So actually the staff, can you talk more about this aspect of Tesla, its human resources and how that affects the evaluation of the company and the potential also?
Absolutely. One of the key, I think Tesla is going to rule the world, or is already ruling it, and market has finally understood this, is the fact that all to get the creme de la creme of the engineering market, always. Because if you think about it, if you are a young engineer, because like, I mean, EVs didn't exist so many years ago, so they're not going to be like many experienced engineers, but would be very innovative, very smart engineers who are every day getting into this field. And think about it, which company would you rather join? If you're an EV specialist, if you're a battery engineer, if you are like autonomous engineer, which company would you join? Would you join Volkswagen, or would you join Renault, or would you join Toyota, or would you join Tesla, like the company which has pretty much be spearhead the entire EV revolution? Elon is a very visionary. He has achieved so many things outside the automotive market, which gives him an insane level over the best of the best engineers. And this is not going to change for the next 10 years. So I believe that they will always be able to out innovate their competitors, because the engineers, once they are not able to join Tesla, might be okay, let me join Volkswagen, let me get some experience there, and then in a one to 2 years time I try to always switch to Tesla. So they will always attract the best talent, and they always, and if you think about it, leverage so much of material expertise that is like, I mean, battery requires a lot of material science, and they can like cross leverage there is not possible for normal incumbents. They can never do this. It's just not possible for them.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a clear advantage and a really insane what do you call, like advantage that nobody can overcome.
Okay, so now let's look at this recommendation again of the graph. So right now it says, okay, that we have talked enough. So it says that it's biased towards the following nodes: money, service, and valid. So we talked enough about the money aspect and the service and so on, and the service aspect of the company. And then it proposes us to think of developing the ideas on the periphery. And some of them are these. So for example, there was something about margin. Yeah, it's the margin of car making. So how much money you actually make on selling cars, and what's the margin of the traditional car companies and Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
And also let's say the services. So the service aspect, which you said is shifting in case of Tesla, because it's proposing not so much service of the car, but rather some kind of software-based tech company-based money-making model. So can you talk more about the connection between this, like how maybe to focus a little bit on this idea of how the traditional car companies make money, the margins that they have, maybe also some potential which they have, because obviously they're also not standing still. I guess they're also investing a lot into businesses like car sharing and all the mobility and transportation businesses. And at the same time, this aspect that you talked about Tesla, that actually it's like a software company. So can you talk more about this and explain maybe how Tesla stands in this context in relation to the others?
Mm-hmm. So before I dive in, I would like to give an example. So it's very important to understand, if you look at the phone industry, 8%, it's crazy, 80% of the profit in the phone industry is with directly associated with Apple. So Apple makes 80% of the profits in the phone industry by producing just 20%, or I have 15 or 20. I haven't checked it recently, but it's like really, really low. So they are able to get crazy margins. They can demand crazy margins. And they're going to be, and then they leverage much of the product. I believe the same thing will happen in the future. So Tesla is going to maintain, just because their product is so much better than its competitors, they're going to be able to maintain 30 to 40% margins, which is unheard of in automotive. In the industry, like, I mean, it's normal to have 10 to 20%. So if you look at most of the car makers, if you go premium, then maybe they have 20% margins. Like BMW and Porsche, they would have 20 or 25%, which is like the premium. Toyota and lower ones, they make a margin of like 10%. Like, this is the range basically where it has always been. And I believe Tesla in the future would be able to leverage 30 to 40% margins on the hardware, just like Apple, on hardware. And on top of that, all these services, revenue, and software, and the full self-driving capability, all of that will come in at the software scale margins. So currently, maybe you graph, if you switch to the graph of this one. If you look here, as so the black line is the average selling price of their vehicles. And this is what you want to see in a business, that they are lowering the cost of their vehicles, but the margins are still up. This is actually want to see in a business, that because then if you lower the cost, more people buy. And if in the same hand, more people are buying, and at the same time, if you're increasing the margin on it, that's really good for your business. If you look at this line, like the green line, like dotted line, or like this line, you see since the production of Model 3, their margins have been constantly up, and here as well, constantly going up. And finally, the market understands in Q2 2020, like at points, these are here, and is only going to improve. Currently, it stands about, as you see, more than 25%. But it's about 25% excluding the regulatory credits. And this margin is only going to improve just because they're so great. And just on the hardware, they're going to have much, much better margins than even the premium cars. Imagine they will be selling Camry-like, Toyota Camry-like cars for margins better than Porsche. And that's the in the industry. That's why you cannot compare an old car maker with new car makers. Their margins are always going to be better. And then the second point, what you said, that it's not like the other incumbents are not moving. They have to think about this and like really understand this deeply. So in the old world, the Volkswagen, the Daimler, they're massively great at producing engines. They understand produce, and that's what their expertise lies in. They took hundreds of years to perfect this technology, chunk out all the problems, and decades or like almost a century to optimize the internal combustion product. Now they have to do the same increase. Now people don't understand this, that the most important thing of producing an EV is the engine of the EV is the battery. So if you don't produce your own batteries, you are useless. I mean, imagine Daimler saying, hey, like Daimler saying to another car company, hey, can you produce our internal combustion engine? That's never like is to make enough margin. But this is what is happening in the EV space. They are buying most of the batteries from three major battery producers, the Panasonic. And so basically imagine these car companies, they buy all the stuff, they just put them together. All they do is putting it all like in a beautiful box, sell it. and that's why their margin is never going to be as good as Tesla, because Tesla they had their own gigafactories 5 years ago, and in the 2020, Volkswagen is also making its own gigafactories, but Tesla has already moved on. It is moved on to producing its own batteries. That means it is going to produce more batteries than Caterpillar, Panasonic, and LG combined. And that's why they're vertically integrated. This is the most important thing. Tesla is always going to be better vertically integrated than the other car makers who are just getting into the game. They have no expertise in producing batteries, no expertise in putting those cell modules together. In the most core part of the technology, and all they do is put the car, like assemble the cars together, and that's in today's term, that's not correct. That's what Apple did. Did a lot of, and of course sent out their manufacturing capabilities to China because it's cheaper then. You will see Tesla also doing by using these at different continents. And the key is vertical integration is better for margins, and that's where Tesla is going to shine.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so maybe then to ask a little bit more about this aspect, let's see what is proposing here in terms of the structural gap. So, for example, here, there it's pointing our attention to how the fleet of Tesla is constantly learning from its real-world data to improve the autonomous driving aspect. And then also how in the old industry, you said the importance was to produce an engine. Now the importance shifts towards this autonomous driving aspect, battery aspect, and so on. So then I have a question to connect this to clusters, as InfraNodus is proposing. Aren't the other companies doing this also? Like, I mean, if you realize this and Tesla realize this, they're probably also looking, and they understand where they need to move. How will their efforts in this direction affect Tesla? Because they still have a lot of resources and manpower and so on. So how would their movements in this direction affect Tesla potentially?
So above
this,
I mean, I think this is completely faulty to say that the other car companies are going to be able to just have the same data leverage. They can just do it, because people don't understand the technicalities of it. Tesla is the only car maker to have over-the-air software updates, and that's insane. Like, since 2012, nobody has been able to just like the smartphone. I mean, you expect that easily like a new version of the software updated, and then it'll have new features and new capabilities. This, no other car company has been able to do it. Show me the proof that any other car company can do this. And the only time Volkswagen basically 2020, like at the start of 2020, when they were mass producing Volkswagen ID3, and I have a very beautiful image there where you see they had a lot of problem with installing all the data they couldn't create this pipeline. They don't have the expertise to handle that much of data. Even Daimler, like while I was working there, I heard so many issues with being able to transfer so much data between the car and the internal source. They just couldn't do it. Like, it requires a lot of expertise in the IT system, which the car companies don't have. And I'll give you one example. One time, Volkswagen, what they said, like at the start of this year, they're like, electric new revolution is going to be, we're going to go and hire 50,000 developers and make a problem with this thinking is they're still thinking like a car maker, where having one, like if every time you have a extra car factory producer laborer, they add to the end production. This is how you think about it in factory. You add more 100 laborers, you produce more, whatever, 20 cars or whatever number of cars. But you and I both know that that's not how software really works, right? Like, I mean, there's an entire to they all work together. Everybody's very much aligned. They work together. There is a right way of doing things, and you slowly expand. And this shows that understand how to build software. If you go out and hire 50,000 developers and hope to compete with Tesla, I mean, good luck with that. That's never going to happen like that. And the proof is already there. When they were trying to load the ID3, they had thing in their factory where they were employing engineers to, like, I mean, go to each car, connect that, and, like, I mean, amount of wires going through to just do a firmware update. And this was in 2020. And Volkswagen is like the farthest ahead in this EV revolution, and even they had crazy difficulties producing. They're producing 50,000 IDs. I'm not 100% sure, which is nothing compared to what Tesla is producing number-wise, and they're having crazy difficulties. So, like, I mean, it's not easy to just write off this capability, because car manufacturers, what they have been doing is optimizing and securing a completely different. Have to very quickly move on to producing, like, cars which are basically computers on wheels. And for to acquire this capability, it takes culture, resources. Sure, they might have a lot of resources, but it takes there's like so much example that I can show you where so many incumbents are just burning money, and they don't get the software. This happens quite a lot. You can burn a lot of money, but doesn't mean that you get outcomes for it. So to produce all of this properly, the culture has to be there, and it has to be done in the right, like, I mean, so not trying to save your existing business, but you actually, like, starting from, you know, ground zero. No other car company has this. They have to, if I'm an executive in one of the car companies which has been producing crazy amount of money in the past decade, I want to see that as possible. I retire, get my pensions, rather than go out there, take crazy risks on this new battery technology. And that's what they try to do this. And now it's too late. Now Tesla has way more resources than anybody else.
That makes sense. Okay, and let's look more into the hidden topics. So what I would be curious about is to see, okay, how can we maybe expand the more peripheral subjects? For instance, the data, the expertise, this we talked about already. Let's remove also margin, market, money, because we talked about that. Engines, leverage, expertise. Okay, so maybe here will be an interesting question to ask. I will also look into here. Let's suppose that you know, you said now that Tesla has a lot of leverage because the world is changing, and that the engines as they used to be are not needed anymore, and so on, because it's about the batteries, it's about the software and stuff. Let's say there are some limitations in terms of the resources or regulations from the governments that, for example, don't allow autonomous cars, or that do not want to sponsor this shift towards battery-based cars, or maybe there is a lack of resources, like we run out of nickel or something, or there is some political upheaval in Congo where most of the stuff that you need in batteries are taken from. So how would this affect Tesla and the other companies? And do you think that there might be a weak spot there, or do you think it's being resolved?
Yeah, so I'll start with the Congo part first. So we mentioned Congo because of cobalt. And cobalt produced today is coming from Congo. However, Tesla doesn't buy any of the cobalt from Congo. That's very important. And secondly, they have this in production. The batteries don't use any cobalt. No other car company has this, except for some Chinese companies. But Tesla today is already producing cars. It's not 100%. Producing cars without cobalt. Then the next most important mineral is nickel, and nickel is again again are we just moving our entire emissions down the supply chain, that while you're producing those batteries, your emissions are already occurring, and then it doesn't matter whether or is it happening higher up the supply chain. If you look at the Tesla nickel production, again, they don't leverage that nickel that is currently most of the production. So out of nowhere, in the last 2-3 years, Indonesia and Philippines are producing a lot of nickel, which is extremely dirty for the environment, and the whole process is really bad. But for that, already Tesla decided to take the entire supply chain into their own hands, and they are very they're coming up with new methods of producing battery components which are really environmental friendly. One thing, I mean, after doing a lot of research into the battery components, understood that you don't have to get all those minerals necessarily from war-torn country. There are different means, and Tesla is already addressing that. So that's why, and that's one of the reasons why it's going to be, because imagine if all the automakers, they're trying to buy battery from the same 3 battery producers, who, it's not that the mines come out of somewhere. If there's so much demand, which is going to have it gets smaller, and then the prices that they would be actually supplied to the other automakers is going to be just of the entire supply chain on your own plays into the plays into the interest of Tesla, which Tesla already do. They're thinking about producing cars, electric cars, which was where Tesla was in 2012 or 2013. Next step, batteries. Next step would be to control your battery raw materials. So they're not even there. The incumbents are not even Tesla address, and the plans that Tesla actually introduced in September and during the battery day, those are some crazy. 3 gigawatt of battery production is insane. To give a perspective, 3 terawatts is the plan in 2030 that they want to produce. And to give a perspective, the entire battery production of the entire world right now is about 100 gigawatt hour. And so by 10x is what we're going to see in the course of next 10 years. Yeah.
Sorry, what
so
will we see? You said.
So we will see we will see a 30x in how much battery used in next 10 years. So we're going to see an increase of 30x batteries, and you can't do this without complete control over the entire supply chain, without bringing all the important key mines to production at time. Yeah. And then the next topic that you talked about was the regulations, and when does it allow, and what if they don't allow autonomous cars to be produced? And so I don't claim that I would that we can have a perfect prediction of when all the lawmakers are going to allow this, but I think what proof would they need to see to be able to say that, hey, you know what, like autonomous cars are safer than a human driving, if you show them enough data. And Tesla a lot of data which shows them, which shows like very clearly that Tesla X, S, and Y are the safest cars in terms of fatalities, in terms of crashes, also fatalities, crashes. So it's one of the safest cars, has less crashes in terms of number of miles driven. And if you enough for over extended period of time, a lawmaker has no other option. Like, I mean, they would be like, yeah, sure, probably the human drivers to drive because it's more like on a statistical level, it's more dangerous. Now, is it going to happen in 5 years? 15 years? I don't know. But if you look at already in Phoenix, in about 30 states, let's even talk Phoenix, 30 states in the US, it's legal to drive, legal to have autonomous cars like operating. And the catch is that the human driver should be paying attention. It's so responsibility of the driver to not cause any accidents. So the regulations are there already. You prove of this, you will, in the due course of time, you will see the regulators approving it. Now, of course, the European regulators are more strict.
Yeah, what if they want to protect their industries, for instance? Like they see that that the old car companies, like in Germany, for instance, didn't transform to the new model, and they just want to protect them. Is there a possibility like that they don't act rationally, let's say, but more in the way of protectionism? And how would that affect Tesla in that case?
So if you look at actually just today, European Commission announced finalized 40% reduction in emissions compared to so in 2030 compared to I think 2016 or something. So 40% reduction in emissions is crazy. All the automakers trying to, they were thinking it's going to be 30%. They were already complaining about 30%. Now the European Commission has like set passed it the law. No, I'm not sure it's a law, but okay, I'm not 100% sure if it's already passed into a law. It's the confirmation. Maybe I should check it. But European is already on behalf of that and against their industry. So I don't expect to go forward. And then if you look at the German government, they've understood that the future is EVs, and that's why they get such a favorable term and try to lure Tesla into Germany. Lo and behold, Tesla is opening up a factory in Berlin. So I mean, it's in the interest, so it's up to them. I'm sorry?
A second factory now.
Factory, like, I mean, but we need to understand this, that this the Berlin factory is going to be way more efficient than any of the factories, which means they're going to produce about 2 to 3 times the average output. So it expects 2 cars per year output, the Berlin Gigafactory, and the government understand that if they don't support now, all of the automaker capability, all the automaker expertise and human capital is going to move away different, and that's why they offer such favorable terms to Tesla to lure them into Germany, so that the expertise, the car making expertise, still remains in the country. That's one of the reasons why Tesla was able to get
right.
That governments are scared. And they want to keep this expertise in-house.
Makes sense. And now, because like, let's say I'll just look at the graph again for a couple of last questions to see at the possible gap in between the things. Maybe this one is interesting. Okay, let's look into produce, expertise, and engineer. Yeah, so here is proposing us to think of the connection between the expertise and the engineers. And here it brings me to another question, like the human factor. So for example, what if something happens to Elon? Like he decides to fly to Mars on the first mission, it crashes. What then?
I used to tell all my friends, like, the biggest risk to my Tesla investment is something happens to Elon. And yeah, so I mean, it is clear to see that that is a very, very major part of the entire revolution. But it's also important to acknowledge that he has already done its job. Like, it's clear to me that Tesla is going to be successful for sure. And his appeal now, he has set up the right culture, the right thinking, the right innovative steps in the way, so that Tesla would be able to survive once if Elon is gone. And this is all, so Tesla has already gone through its most difficult period. And I think 5 years, like 10 to 15 years, once Tesla becomes the biggest company on the planet, which I think will happen fairly soon. He's going to focus all his energy into building the colony on Mars, and at that time, like I mean, he's no longer required to help out Tesla anymore, because the revolution is already behind.
Right.
Also think about this very like a lot, like, and also it became very clear to me that, like, when 5 years ago, when Tesla was still struggling and it was challenging the entire the incumbent, the oil industry, the small little Tesla was disrupting, it became clear to me that the only reason that Elon actually survived, or no assassinated him or got rid of him, was because he had his other hand into rocket technology. So SpaceX is a huge, in my opinion, SpaceX is a huge reason why Tesla also succeeded, because nobody could touch and also governments were always, like the US government would ensure his safety. I mean, it's in their interest that Elon survives and does what he wants to do. So that has helped Tesla immensely, in my opinion. And yeah, like, a lot of people in the beginning, like, would always like think, oh my God, if this guy is to land vertically, which no other country has been able to do for 60 years. If he can do this, come and do this, of course, are going to say it's a good product, let me try it out, and oh yeah, it is great, and I want to support that. So
nice.
SpaceX has had a huge impact on Tesla for sure.
Okay, so let's look at the graph, because I think that we covered quite a lot of subjects. Even it's showing us now all the main topics that we talked about. So for example, there is this car company margin, which we discussed a lot, and Tesla in relation to that, production of battery produce, then here also the market.
Can I show you like one graph which shows a little bit of like a thing about the margin and the leverage and the money. So if I scroll to this chart, most thing why stock market in my opinion, finally understood 2 quarters ago what Tesla actually is. This is the person you see. So the person who put together this chart is Mayur Thakur in Twitter, and this chart basically shows the return on assets compared to the traditional business. So every time you spend some money to get some sort of income, this is what is returned. And Tesla has started to become way more efficient. So like going 2 quarters back, that's when they started to show this efficiency like crazy. So every time you spend $1 on CapEx, it produces way more free cash flow, which no other automaker can produce, and it's only going to go down for them. They have to invest more, and the same cycle that Tesla did, and you see in the chart, like, that Tesla had to go through -10, -11% return on capital to go this phase. Most of them had to go through this phase as well, and for this plain simple reason, it's a much better asset to own than the traditional car makers.
Okay, nice, thank you. So let me look at the graph. We have the car company Tesla, margin, software. So here it's showing us that most of the margin is going to come from software, but also much more efficient hardware manufacturing process. Then we have the market and how it's important that it came in the right time. Then we also had a conversation about the engines and how Tesla is focused on batteries and how this is going to shift. And then also the human competence, the engineers, and so on. There is more stuff, but I think these were kind of like the basics. Yeah?
Yeah, I can add a couple more things, more new topics if you want, and we can see how the network actually upgrades after that, because these are things. What we talk about, just car, like I mean, in the automotive space, and what you can do in car business. And my reasoning is that for Tesla, just 1/3 or maybe even less than 1/3 of its future business. So then there is also solar and the energy aspects of things, which no talk really important, because if you look at in 2017 or 2018, they produced this biggest battery in Australia, right? And it started to have much better with base battery itself by leveraging the price arbitrage as well as the auxiliary services. It was able to get back its investment within 3 years or less than 3 years of worth of projects. A return in 3 years is unheard of in traditional energy business. Oh my God, this is like crazy. And that's why I think as soon as Tesla is able to, it was a concept. So as Tesla produce batteries for the storage facilities, they're going to basically completely remove all of the gas peaker plants that currently exist. I don't want to get too deep into like what are gas peaker plants, but basically these inefficient which run 20 hours a year, and they run all the time, and they cost so much just so that they can provide in like those 20 hours in a year the electricity security that all of us need or demand, that all there is electricity available to us. That's why there's a huge industry for gas peaker plants, and all of this is going to go away. They're going to disrupt all of these plants, and that's just like one aspect of things.
Okay.
Talking, and then the second
business.
one is the energy business. Yeah, the utility scale storage business. It's going to be huge, and they had a very good proof of concept in Australia. Then if you come to the solar business, it's really underappreciated. People don't understand this, that most of the cost involved in the solar industry is for sales and marketing. So it takes a lot of money to acquire customers to sell your solar panels. Now, Tesla can leverage its existing brand to sell a customer that, hey, you know what, you want a car? Let us also sell you solar panels combined with the power storage, the HVAC system, which is the heating system in the house. So we'll give you an entire sustainable energy product. So they can basically bring the customer into their whole ecosystem for much cheaper. They don't have any prices, marketing costs, nothing of that, and can leverage their amazing brand to sell solar panels, and that's just great. And that's why they're going to be better also in the solar industry. And it is slowly going to pick up, but in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to become one of the more important of Tesla's.
Okay, makes sense. So we added these topics here. Well, I think we have quite a good overview, because we focused on the most important stuff. If we remove this Tesla car, we see that we talked about batteries and energy, margin, market, and so on. So thank you. It was pretty informative and interesting. We have a huge graph from it, which we will share later on InfraNodus. Also, if someone has any questions, they can write in the comments to the video later, or tweet, or maybe you also want to share your Twitter account if somebody wants to ask you.
I'm not so active on it, but you can find me here on this Twitter handle.
Hitesh Kar. Okay, I'm going to add it now also here. So if somebody wants to contact Hitesh, you can do this
Mhm.
over here on this Twitter nickname. Thank you very much. It was super informative. A lot of information. We have the graph. I'm going to send you the link after so you can navigate through it. Kind of like a nice overview of the main topic. I'm sure you have a lot to share more, but I think it's pretty like full right now. And also you answered to the more challenging questions, I think, quite well. You had some kind of like a vision for why the risk factors would not affect the company and so on, which is interesting. I mean, I already bought one stock of Tesla, by the way, my first one a few days ago.
Oh, you bought? Really?
Yeah,
Nice.
just symbolically, yeah. But I think I want to analyze everything a little bit more and see. But after this conversation, I have to be honest, I'm much more now likely to get some more. I'm going to have to take a critical distance also and to see if there is any other challenging thoughts and questions in relation to this, which I'm going to ask you. But so far, I mean, it looks pretty good. Have you ever thought of any like a problematic part in this whole thing? Like if you were to challenge yourself or to be like, hey, Hitesh, you know, like this one thing is really a risk factor for this company, just to be honest. Is there anything at all for you or not really at the moment? Like you don't see any risk at all? Like a financial crisis, I don't know, like or is it only asteroid that will fall on Earth and destroy the whole planet that's going to destroy Tesla?
No, I think you said this earlier already. Like if something happens to, then this is going to be super bad for the stock. If something happens to Elon, I think that that day itself, the stock market is going to be halving. And then the second problem is the battery.
Is what? Sorry,
is really like battery minerals. The supply is not enough. So very strategically and very correctly, Tesla has to make those mines. Those mines take 5 years into production. You know, it takes a long time to convert a mine to produce those raw materials that you need. So these two things are one of the most biggest danger risk for the type of success that I expect for Tesla.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We've been doing this interview using InfraNodus. I was writing what you're answering, visualizing it as a graph, using the insight generation tool, which is here to help ask some interesting questions. I hope you enjoyed it too. And thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise.
Yes, and maybe sometime we can also talk about the valuation and get deep into where the stock price might go to, or what might happen then.
Definitely. Thank you.
Right.